In the world of paleontology, there are many isolated species. Although they left behind fossils, their evolutionary origins are very difficult to trace. They are tentatively categorized into groups of uncertain genus and species. The Ediacaran biota is a prime example. But there are organisms even more mysterious, whose nature, even whether they belong to the eukaryota, is uncertain. About 2.1 billion years ago, Earth harbored a little-known group of macroscopic organisms, the Francevillian Biota. They seem like a joke played by creation, as if nature suddenly felt inspired, opened the door for primitive life to step towards the world of complex organisms, then decided the time wasn't right, and quickly closed the door again. Molecular clock estimates suggest that eukaryotic cells, the foundation of modern animals, originated no more than 1.85 billion years ago. The Avalon explosion, the event that gave rise to modern animals, occurred about 600 million years ago during the Ediacaran period. However, in the black shale of the Franceville Basin in Gabon, Africa, scientists have discovered unusual geological traces. These traces have very strange shapes. Some samples look like a fried egg, others like a flying saucer, and still others resemble an anomalous spherical mass. There are even complex structures that look like flowers with connecting pearl-like strings. Superficially, they appear to be organisms that could float or crawl on the seabed. However, these fossils are incredibly ancient, dating back to the Paleoproterozoic era, about 2.1 billion years ago, to the extent that the scientific community dared not affirm they were truly traces of life. This is because minerals like pyrite can also create similar markings. Surprisingly, over the past decade, scientists have found new evidence suggesting these traces are very likely genuine biological fossils. For instance, the sulfur content in these fossil samples is similar to that of the surrounding environment, whereas the slow crystallization process of pyrite minerals usually causes this value to differ markedly from the rock matrix. Furthermore, the zinc content in these fossils is extremely high, and zinc is a crucial element in eukaryotic organisms. Additionally, local sediments contain numerous life-supporting nutrients and other pieces of evidence that are too numerous to list here. The abundance of evidence has increasingly made the biological hypothesis prevail over the mineral one. It's hard to believe that Earth may have twice nurtured animal-like complex life forms. So why did the Francevillian Biota suddenly appear and then rapidly vanish 2.1 billion years ago? This mystery is likely closely linked to the First Great Oxidation Event. Around 2.3 billion years ago, the oxygen level in Earth's atmosphere unexpectedly surged, reaching levels nearly equivalent to today's concentration. But around 2.1 billion years ago, the oxygen concentration suddenly dropped sharply to a very low level. It is possible that the Francevillian Biota was an independent group of organisms born during that oxygen-rich phase. To date, these organisms have been found in only one geological layer. About 2.1 billion years ago, that layer was a shallow, oxygen-rich delta area, a type of environment extremely rare on Earth at that time. If these organisms could only survive in that special environment, it could explain why their fossils are so rare. Unfortunately, before the Francevillian Biota could truly thrive, atmospheric oxygen levels rapidly declined. Since their numbers were already small, this severe environmental change directly led to the extinction of the entire group. It took more than 1 billion years for complex, animal-like life forms to reappear on Earth when oxygen concentration surged again. Life in the Paleoproterozoic era is so ancient that humanity still cannot fully understand its origins. However, mysterious organisms that perplex humans do not always appear in such distant eras. The Mazon Creek fossil beds in the United States were formed near the end of the Carboniferous period, about 310 million years ago. At that time, this area was a shallow tropical sea and river estuary, and many bizarre organisms have been preserved here. Among the most incomprehensible are two species, the H-shaped organism and the Y-shaped organism. The H-shaped organism is regarded as an abstract masterpiece of the prehistoric world. It looks as if an invisible hand molded it into an H-shaped frame. In the middle of the body, a strange fleshy sac of unknown function surprisingly emerges. This fleshy mass could change its shape at will, sometimes round, sometimes heart-shaped, even forming difficult-to-describe geometric shapes. Its appearance seemed to depend on the mood of each individual. To this day, scientists still do not understand why the H-shaped organism evolved into such a bizarre form. They hypothesize that it may have been a filter-feeding organism and perhaps continued to grow throughout its life, as the found fossil samples vary greatly in size. The largest individual reaches 15 centimeters in length, while the smallest is only about 2 centimeters. Currently, there is insufficient evidence to place the H-shaped organism into any known animal phylum. Some researchers speculate that it may be related to the phylum Hemichordata or Cnidaria. Its fellow enigma, the Y-shaped organism, is no less baffling to scientists. This creature is 7 to 20 centimeters long, mainly composed of a stalk-like body and 2 long arms. These 2 arms show no characteristics suggesting a function for capturing prey. Their specific function remains unclear. One hypothesis suggests that the surface of this organism's body might have been covered with stinging cells, thus potentially related to species belonging to the phylum Cnidaria, such as sea anemones. However, this hypothesis is difficult to confirm because the Y-shaped organism actually possesses an excretory organ on both sides of its body, an anus. This suggests it might be a bilaterally symmetric animal. The large slit between its 2 long arms is very likely the mouth, and delicate fossil traces indicate a large stomach pouch inside its abdomen. The Mazon Creek fossil beds are indeed a den of strange creatures. They also preserve one of the 3 famous paleontological monsters, the Tully Monster, Tullimonstrum. The Tully Monster looks like something out of human-imagined science fiction. It is about 35 centimeters long with a cigar-shaped body, triangular fins, and eyes perched on a soft, fleshy stalk, like a piece of meatloaf. Most remarkably, its head extends into a proboscis, like the claw of a crab, ending in a mouth shaped like a pair of pincers. Inside the mouth are small, sharp teeth. This bizarre shape has caused great difficulty for the scientific community. Since its discovery in the 1960s, the true identity of the Tully monster has been a subject of continuous debate, and there is still no final conclusion. Scientists have tested every possible hypothesis, from mollusks, arthropods, conodonts, preapellid worms, even the possibility of it being a primitive chordate. In 2015, a research team from Yale University claimed to have found the answer. After analyzing over 1,200 Tully monster fossils, they suggested the organism was a chordate, possibly an ancestor of lampreys or ancient jawless fish. This was based on the discovery of a slender white line in the fossil resembling a spine, which might be composed of cartilage similar to the notochord of present-day primitive fish. However, in 2023, other research groups reanalyzed these fossils and reached a completely opposite conclusion. While they still do not know exactly what the Tully monster truly is, they emphatically state it is not a chordate. This is because the body segment in front of its eyes is also segmented, which clearly differs from the structure of vertebrates. Fortunately, we can somewhat understand the lifestyle of the Tully monster. Based on its peculiar mouth structure, scientists believe it was a carnivorous predator. It swam in the ocean to hunt and preferred murky waters. Although the origin of the Tully monster remains a mystery, it seems the fate of the three paleontological monsters is nearing its end, as its two companions in this group of strange organisms have gradually revealed their true origins. Now, let's turn our attention to another ancient monster, Typhlosis. It also lived in the oceans of the Carboniferous period, but a little earlier, about 330 million years ago, at the beginning of the Carboniferous. The fossil of Typhlosis was discovered in the United States in the 1970s, yet for decades the true origin of this organism has been shrouded in a veil of mystery. The clues it left behind are extremely scarce. Its body is fusiform, spindle-shaped, and about 9 centimeters long. The posterior end has a distinct caudal fin supported by 2 parallel bundles of fin rays. This suggests that, like the Tully monster, it was capable of active swimming. But what is more astonishing is its internal structure. Besides the normal mouth and digestive tract, inside its body is a black, round, iron-containing organ called the iron disc. Scientists still cannot determine the function of this bizarre iron disc, only knowing that it has an extremely high iron content, looking exactly like a mysterious chip implanted inside the body. If you wanted to catch this monster, perhaps you should try using a magnet as a fishing hook. Initially, researchers thought they had quickly found a relative for this strange creature because its body contained conodont elements. Thus, it was once speculated that Typhlosis was the very conodont animal they had been searching for all along. However, just a few years later, when complete conodont fossils were discovered, people realized that conodonts were actually a type of jawless fish, and the conodont fragments inside Typhlosis were merely its last meal. Since then, for many subsequent decades, the origin of the Typhlosis monster once again fell into mystery. It wasn't until 2022 that a truly sensational study broke the deadlock. Scientists discovered that Typhlosis has a small, toothed tongue. It could rapidly launch this tongue out of its body cavity to attack prey. Even stranger, this tongue is actually the anterior part of its digestive tract. That's right, it uses its own gut to hunt. This structure's morphology closely resembles the radula of mollusks, so researchers tentatively classified Typhlosis into the phylum Mollusca. More specifically, they suggest it may belong to a primitive group of gastropods, similar to some modern snails. However, this hypothesis remains highly controversial. Many scientists interviewed indicated that it is still too early to definitively confirm Typhlosis as a mollusk, as similar radula-like structures have also been found in other animals. The final member of these three paleontological monsters initially seems familiar, but its classification is no less challenging. This is Nectocaris, a supermonster from the ancient era. Nectocaris fossils were discovered in Canada in 1910, but for decades afterward, it was forgotten in a corner of the specimen storage. It wasn't until 1976 that a young paleontologist began to describe the species. However, he quickly ran into difficulties because this small creature, about 3 to 4 centimeters long, looked exactly like a shrimp but possessed fleshy fins, a feature never found in arthropods. This contradictory combination made him unable to classify it. Subsequently, another researcher claimed to have found a notochord-like structure in Nectocaris's body, and it was thus tentatively placed in the phylum Chordata. This hypothesis was widely accepted for over 20 years until an unexpected breakthrough occurred. In 2010, 91 new, perfectly preserved Nectocaris fossils were discovered, and the results astonished everyone. The initial Nectocaris specimens turned out to be severely incomplete, and the missing part was not insignificant. It did not look like a shrimp at all, but resembled a primitive squid with 2 long tentacles. The creature lacked a conventional mouth, but had a funnel-shaped structure beneath its head. This might have been an organ for sucking in food, not a siphon for propulsion, as in modern squid. Additionally, it had a pair of strange membranes. Despite its highly unusual morphology, after comprehensive analysis, researchers still suggested that Nectocaris might belong to the group Cephalopoda, the group of squids and octopuses. However, Nectocaris appeared in the Cambrian period about 520 million years ago, more than 100 million years earlier than shell-less cephalopods, and even about 20 million years before primitive shelled cephalopods. According to classical theory, cephalopods evolved from shelled mollusks and gradually internalized their shells, becoming the soft-bodied forms like modern squids. If Nectocaris is truly related to the cephalopod group, this evolutionary process would become highly contradictory, much like humans evolving into monkeys and then evolving back into humans. Therefore, many scholars remain skeptical that classifying Nectocaris as a cephalopod is convincing. However, excitingly, in 2025, research on Nectocaris achieved a breakthrough. Scientists discovered a new species closely related to Nectocaris, named Nectonatus. This Nectonatus species has a head structure, anus position, and large tentacles very similar to species belonging to the extinct phylum Vetulicolia, such as Amisquia and Toya. This finding led them to propose that the family Nectocarididae should be transferred to a group closer to the phylum Vetulicolia. This phylum now only has a small, little-known surviving branch called the class Chaetognatha, arrowworms. The large eyes of Nectocaris suggest that its vision far surpassed that of modern arrowworms, indicating that species in this group were once active predators in the early stages of evolution, holding a high position in the food chain. Although their body length was only about 20 centimeters, fossils of this group have been recorded since the distant Ediacaran period, when almost no animal on Earth knew how to crawl. Therefore, before other animal species arose, it is very likely that the ancestors of Nectocaris were important predators in the ancient ocean. If you found this video interesting and useful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next discoveries.